My name is Helen Woeste. I'm with OSTIF, the Open Source Technology Improvement Fund. We've been talked about a little bit at this conference in context of the work we've done on auditing some LF energy projects. But today I'm going to be talking about something entirely differently, which is the question, what do we owe our natural and digital resources? We're going to go and compare the two and define the two. Obviously, if we're going to talk about these concepts, we need to understand what we are talking about. We'll contrast about the way we fund them, the way we contribute to them, and then get into the requirements and the complications and challenges moving forward about how we fund and contribute. What is nature and what do we owe it? For this talk, we're going to be assuming when I say nature, I'm talking about flora and fauna, the earth, water, air, the things that in fact make energy. Included in this definition is man-made nature, things like farms, parks, gardens, things that we agree that as a part of living on this earth, we need to contribute back to nature and participate in things like paying taxes towards governments that participate in those industries, as well as individual contributions, things like cutting down on your meat consumption, participating in recycling and trash pickups, and even just picking up cigarette butts off the street. All of that is necessary, and we all do it because we believe that life on Earth is dependent on our natural resources, and energy in particular comes from these natural resources. Open source, of course, is what we're here about today, but when I talk about it in this context, I'm referring to the digital software as well as the web of human connections that makes it. It is the basis of our global digital infrastructure and a resource in addition to supplying the energy resources and many other digital infrastructures that we depend on. A large question in this space is, what do we owe it? How do we as individuals get others to join in? And how do we fund it in a sustainable way? And must we regulate it? Now, when we talk about individual and institutional contributions to these two separate resources, there's a lot that's similar that allows us to draw conclusions. The first is natural selection. Nature relies on survival of the fittest in order to propagate the strongest genes onto the next generation. And of course, Earth and nature are known to adapt to situations and continue to live and grow on this Earth. Similarly, open source projects can be forked, adapted, change over time in order to adapt to what is needed in the ecosystem. We can pivot and survive nature and in open source. And for interconnectivity, nature relies on itself as the generation of oxygen and hydrogen from air and water has been recycled in plants and animals. That's how it regenerates and recreates. Changing one part of an ecosystem alters the whole of it. Similar to open source, where projects rely on each other, fork, pull, form one another. One project can have thousands of dependencies, making a web of reliance and interconnection. Now, when I talk about the next topic, permanence, I am talking about it in a macro level, as obviously individual projects can be deleted, changed, sunsetted, and organisms, all living organisms, must die. However, the sustainability, the stability, and endurance of natural resources and open source software are remarkable and similar. Our society would be irrevocably changed if either resource were not to exist as it does right now. Finally, prevalence. Nature is all around us. It's powering the room we're in right now, the world we're in, and it's made possible by open source. Not to mention that the materials and code in our phone, laptops, and digital products are all a combination of both nature and science. Infrastructure, natural and digital, is everywhere. Now, there are key differences that make it difficult for, as an individual or an institution, to justify contributing or funding them equally. The first, of course, is the fact that one is created and the other exists. Open source is, of course, created by humans, and nature is a result of the planet Earth and autocatalysis. This means that a molecule can catalyze and form its own self, something I'm sure a lot of developers wish their code would do. But a key part of replication and genesis on Earth is that ability for nature to recreate itself. Open source cannot say the same. It requires that human element. Next is the tangible and the ephemeral. Everything in nature is, of course, in one way or another made of atoms. It's tangible, it's ownable in a way that the ephemerality of code is not. Thirdly, end-of-life situations. Handling death in open source is often difficult and can be sunset or canceled or just generally handled poorly. However, in nature, all death happens, and it's pretty much guaranteed in order to make nature continue on Earth. It's guaranteed, and all bioorganic matter is going to decay and recycle into new existence. Now, when we talk about what we owe these two resources, there's two different ways we can talk about how we contribute. The first, which is obvious, is the individual. We have the things you can do as yourself, which I mentioned before, cutting down on meat, recycling, creating a garden, planting natural flowers, giving back naturally to the earth through things like, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the word for, I apologize, I'm going to move on. For open source, obviously, there's the contributions of code you can give, non-code contributions such as contributing to documentation, how we attract people to doing those roles, both in open source and as a natural resource, is incredibly important and also a very difficult question to answer. As for systemic support, I'm thinking specifically of institutions like governments, corporations, and foundations and nonprofits that both plan programs of human labor in order to benefit open source and natural resources, as well as donate time and money to those efforts. Through programs and organizations, through the governments, things like the U.S. Forest Service and the World Wildlife Fund or the International Union for the Conservation of Nature exists to help funnel international and national contributions towards natural conservation, and organizations like LF continue to help bring money in towards the open source cause. So why, knowing all those things, aren't we seeing more people and money in these two resources? The first is governance and how we should operate and run these projects, and as well as how do we even begin to address the concept of running or governing nature? To what extent can we manage or control versus simply guide and advise? On a macro scale, this is the biggest question, as obviously on a micro scale, most projects are run by maintainers, and gardens and institutions like parks are often run by government-funded institutions. But when we think about both of them as a whole, the governance question gets incredibly tricky and incredibly fickle if we think about how much do we invest in trying to determine the legal governance structure for something like open source, or how much the government should get involved with tree or oxygen or water regulation. Next, we have global warming. This issue is rapidly affecting how our technology and natural resources are used and distributed, particularly with melting ice caps, increasingly volatile storms and weather events, changing ecosystems, reduced food and water production, as well as AI affecting water intake across the world with increased usage. Government involvement, the CRA, STA, and initiatives like the STF or STA, encourage and regulate government and academic involvement in open source, which of course, while great to see more involvement, also invites more outside opinions on our incredibly insular community, as well as invites the question of changing in political administrations across different countries and the change in political philosophy and policy, nature, and political belief in natural resources. Finally, we get back to that topic I keep touching on, individual and institutional contributions. Often we ask ourselves, what does it matter if I pick up that piece of trash, or if I have a garden or not, if the world is rapidly deteriorating anyway? It seems hopeless or dauntless in the face of what could be done by government institutions, who often say that the onus of the work should be done by individuals and not be the responsibility of institutions or corporations. When you have a blame game like this, the situation has to turn back to the individual onus and ethics that we have to say, what do I owe this world, this digital world, and this natural world that I live in, and what does that mean on a daily basis? Additionally, individual contributions can often be more long-term and require less time investment than the labor and legal requirements institutions must go through in order to do the big, grand financial gestures or projects that we expect or would like to see them do. So there is a difference I haven't quite touched on since I talked about the differences between these two things, and that's the fact that FOSS is made up of people and people have voices. Nature cannot speak for itself, and natural resources are only able to be supported and funded and prioritized because people speak about the issues that are affecting us through nature. However, FOSS has maintainers, it has people and believers, and we need to be speaking up for what we know for both nature and open source to be able to receive the work that it needs and the funding and support and contributions both on that level as individuals speaking to each other and as individuals speaking to our governments, institutions, and corporations and businesses, that we know what we need and we can speak to you and tell you exactly what change can happen. So thank you so much. I apologize for getting a little lost earlier. The timing threw me off, but I appreciate you hanging in there with me while I got through this. Thank you so much.